Srila Prabhupada called San Francisco New Jagannath Puri. So devotees would come from all over the world to attend the Rath Yatra because Srila Prabhupada was there in attendance. There was no Rath Yatras in Australia or Tokyo or Los Angeles, New York, so people would come from all over the world. And so it was a great, occasion for the devotees to come together and celebrate that festival with Srila Prabhupada. Yeah, this is in front of the 518 Frederick Street. This is right on the sidewalk in front of Frederick Street. Devotees painting the canopy and upholstering the asans. This was the biggest festival that was ever held in ISKCON in the early days, 1970 Rath Yatra. It was like this monster. Out of this little storefront, we created this huge publicity campaign, and we mobilized the whole city of San Francisco.
All of this happened, all these 3 huge Rath carts, all generated out of this little teeny San Francisco center. You really couldn't call it a temple. It was just a storefront. It was teeny. Imagine the energy and there was no consideration of yourself. You just never thought about yourself. Oh, I'm tired. Oh, I'm wet. Oh, I'm cold. You just got on with it. You couldn't disappoint Prabhupada.
At the time, I was a new devotee, had been a devotee about 4 months. Of course, I'd been hearing Prabhupada's lectures and reading his books and listening to some of the recordings, and there was a lot of anticipation about Rath Yatra in general, but the airport. We went to the airport to greet him. There was just so many devotees there, and we were just having this huge kirtan, waiting for Prabhupada to come.
I had joined in '69 at 518 Frederick Street, but I couldn't stay because I was a Canadian. So I went back up to Canada and moved into the temple in Vancouver, and I stayed there for 6 months. We came down for Rath Yatra, and by that time I was really psyched up. You're meeting the spiritual master of the universe. You've been wandering throughout the universe for millions of lifetimes. Now, with this meeting, your karma, everything is going to be relieved. So I was quite excited.
We're waiting for the plane to come in, and Prabhupada was coming off the plane, and he was walking up. It seemed like to me he was by himself. Maybe there were some devotees in the background, but the image I have is Prabhupada was walking up this plank, and he had this very innocent expression. I had never really seen a person exemplify that kind of humility before, because he was walking up and he had this expression as if to turn around and see who everyone had come to meet.
But I got all the temple presidents to spend like $100 each and buy these white gardenias, those big, beautiful, highly scented gardenias. Each president stepped forward and gave him a huge white gardenia, just covered with gardenias.
His eyes were very penetrating, something about his eyes. It seems like Krishna Bhakti comes from his eyes or something, but just for a second feeling his glance and just feeling the depth of that glance and the intensity of emotion that everyone felt. We were just caught up, and everyone around me and myself, tears were just coming from our eyes, and just seeing a person who had characteristics that I'd never experienced before, and feeling the intensity of the kirtan, and it was very moving to this day.
We used to be able to do that. Go into an airport and just rock it down, Everything was for Prabhupada. We didn't know anything else. We didn't know anyone else. We were like clean slates. He taught us everything. We had no outside influence. Look at that. He's dancing right in the airport. Why? Because he got a wonderful welcome, and the devotees were so enthusiastic. So, you know, you reciprocated. And the more you could do for him, the more he would reciprocate in kind.
That's the lot. 3 carts are being built in that lot. This is where Srila Prabhupada came to visit the Rath Yatra cart. And he amazed all the devotees. He just laid out flat on the dirt and paid his obeisances to the Rath Yatra cart. And he said, the Rath is as good as the deity. You can see Jayananda and Naranarayana there.
Here it is, the moment of truth, actually. You see, we're pulling the Rath Yatra cars out into the street, more or less in front of the temple on 518 Frederick Street. I'm in the middle of all of this because I figure if anyone's going to get squashed, I'm the designer and architect, and I should be the one to get squashed. When we had finally built them and realized how massive they were, we were scared stiff as to what would happen when we took them off the blocks and started rolling them down the hill. We thought they would continue to roll and go right through the temple door and out the back and down into the bay. I might add, it had no brakes whatsoever, and therefore if it had gotten away, it would have gotten away. What we did with the paint was we used natural earth pigments. I took deep tone latex base and mixed the pigments with water and had it shaken up at the paint place. And so what we did was we used the same pigmentation that they use in Jagannath Puri. You see how many men it was required to break the Rath Yatra car. All of this was designed and built custom within a matter of a few weeks. I think we had about 6 or 8 weeks in which we built everything from scratch. And we were able to acquire lumber. We spent very little cash for lumber. Most of it was acquired from donation and wood that was left inadvertently lying around.
Srila Prabhupada sent Naranarayan up to design the carts. And I remember one meeting that Naranarayan was walking around the room holding his head, you know, and Srila Prabhupada said, what was a matter? Because you could see Naranarayan was in anxiety. And he told Srila Prabhupada that he needed special empowerment. He felt he needed a special empowerment in order to do these carts. And he told Prabhupada it had to come in a name. So Prabhupada told him, all right, then for this, now you have become Vishwakarma, the architect of the universe. And Narayana lit up, and that was all he needed to get his inspiration for figuring out how to, you know, how to build all the 3 cars, because he had to invent the scopes for the domes coming down.
The tops were designed so that the whole Rath Yatra car could slip under a 15-foot high overpass. So the entire part came down. We had it all designed the year before. We just took a pole and lowered it down, but that cart was only 35 feet tall. These were like over 60 feet tall. And so we just were building it. We didn't think. And then Srila Prabhupada was in Los Angeles. He happened to talk to Tamal and said, and how is the lowering mechanism going to be designed? And Tamal said, oh, Narayana is working on that. He knows all about it. He's a genius engineer. He can do it, you know. So Srila Prabhupada said to Tamal, so who is checking on Narayana? And Tamal said, oh, you don't have to check on Narayana. He knows what he's doing. And Prabhupada said, why not ask? So Tamal phoned up. He said, I hate to ask you this, you know, I mean, it's so silly, but how are you doing the mechanism? How is it raising up? And we said, well, we're just, we hadn't thought of how to do it. So Lochan, myself, Madhavisa, and Jayananda, we all sat there for 4 days without sleeping, day and night, not able to figure out how to raise that top. And finally, somehow or other, it came to me how to make this telescoping tube that could be raised up in increments, which is sort of the model that's been used ever since, except it's been made, you know, much more sophisticated since then, much better design. But then Prabhupada said sternly, no one should ever be in charge completely of something. There should be a committee to make sure. Because Prabhupada, if anyone, had tremendous confidence in what I could do, and Tamal had complete confidence in what I could do, and yet I had made the biggest blunder that could have destroyed the whole festival if we had not stopped and worked that out.
When he first came to the temple, I wasn't very conscious of who he was, because I was a brand new devotee. And he came into the temple room, and everyone paid their obeisances, and when everyone had their heads down, I looked up at Srila Prabhupada, and he laughed, he smiled at me, and it was the first realization that I ever had, that he was the first person that had ever loved me. That was very clear, that he was the first person in my life that had ever loved me, and then he knew clearly who I was, and everything about me. I felt, he saw right through me, whatever. Not in a bad way, not like saw through my artificiality, but saw who I really was. That was a very, very special thing. And then, everyone sat down and he spoke a little bit.